אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. ואף על פי שיתמהמה עם כל זה אני מאמין. ואף על פי שיתמהמה עם כל זה אני מאמין.
So between few cries, I will speak about a little bit Dr. Vidor. I got this possibility today, and I'm very grateful that you organized this event, and to see the faces and the families, and the continuation is it is a worth thing to organize this. So I've first met with Dr. Vidor in 2007. I heard only his name from someone, and searched in the phone directory his number. Living in my birth town as a high school teacher, I had the idea to build a Holocaust memorial there. I wanted to discuss this idea with him. Also, I was curious, of course. He was the very first Bonyhad Jew I would have ever met in my life. And that time, the only one who could introduce me the forgotten or hidden Yiddishkeit of Bonyhad. I traveled to Pécs to meet with him and his wife. And they welcomed me with exquisite hospitality. There was a smile and positive surprise on his face, and he liked my memorial idea. As we started to talk about the past, they immediately interested me. Gyuri Bácsi was talking calmly and thoughtfully, and I surprised that in his voice there was no any hate or revengeful. He contacted me with Leslie Blau and helped me to organize the publication of his best friend's book. After the book presentation, it seemed to be that Bonyhad has discovered its Jewish past. He was invited to talk there a few times, and it meant a lot to me that he never forgot to express his loyalty in public towards me and my job. Meanwhile, I started to interested in Judaism, and I went to the Pécs shul with them sometimes. And
sorry, Hazkara, if you don't mind, if you can just make sure that you're talking closely to the mic, because it goes from good to loud to very low.
My English. So meanwhile, I started to interested in Judaism, and I went to the Pécs shul with them sometimes, and even my very first Seder I spent with sitting near Magdalene and Gyuri Bácsi at the main table in the elegant, I don't know the word in English, Pécs Synagogue's hall. Our friendship developed during the years. They helped me to be a volunteer soldier in Israel, and several times I even asked personal advices from them as well, because of their harmonic marriage made a huge impression at me. And thanks God, Baruch Hashem, after getting married, my very first visit to Bonyhad, we met again in Pécs. At the same time, I was able to introduce them to new persons. One was my husband, Yehuda, and the other was myself as a Jewish woman. I am very privileged, and wait a minute, I'm very privileged that I think I lost my paper, it's not here, that I'm very privileged to meet with them, and I don't know if, yeah, I find, I'm thankful for him and Magdalene, because my journey from Bonyhad. I have first met with Dr. Vidor in 2007. I heard only his name from someone, and researched in the phone directory his number. Living in my birth town as a high school teacher, I had the idea to build a Holocaust memorial there. I wanted to discuss this idea with him. Also, I was curious, of course. He was the very first Bonyhad Jew I would have ever met in my life. And that time, the only one who could introduce me, the forgotten or hidden Yiddishkeit of Bonyhad. I traveled to Pécs to meet with him and his wife, and they welcomed me with exclusive hospitality. There was a smile and a positive surprise on his face, and he liked the memorial idea. As we started to talk about the past, they immediately entrusted me. Yuri Bácsi was talking calmly and thoughtfully, and I was surprised that in his voice there was no any hate or revengeful. He contacted me with Leslie Blau and helped me to organize the publication of his best friend's book, Leslie Blau, Bonyhad, a Destroyed Jewish Community. After the book presentation, it seemed to be that Bonyhad has discovered its Jewish past. He was invited to talk there a few times. And it meant a lot to me that he never forgot to express his loyalty in public towards me and my job. Meanwhile, I started to be interested in Judaism, and I went to the Pécs shul with them sometimes, and I remember that the very first Seder I spent with sitting near Magdalene and Yuri Bácsi at the main table, because they were very honored members of the Pécs Jewish community, of course, in the Pécs Synagogue's hall. Our friendship developed during the years. They helped me to be a volunteer soldier in Israel, and several times I even asked personal advices from them as well, because of their harmonic marriage made a huge, huge impression on me. And thanks God, Baruch Hashem, after getting married, at my very first visit to Bonyhad, we met again in Pécs. And at the same time, I was able to introduce them to new persons. One was my husband, Yehuda, and the other was myself as a Jewish woman. I am very privileged and thankful for him and Magdalene, because I feel my journey from Bonyhad to my present life hardly would start without meeting with him and knowing him personally.
Nagyon kevesen fejezik be ezt a pilóta. Igen. De ő ment mindig feljebb és feljebb. Egy szép napon kaptunk egy levelet, hogy meghívtak bennünket, hogy a fiam tábornoki rangot kap. És hogy meghívnak bennünket. És elmentem a feleségemmel, és ott a katona, a főparancsnok, hogy mondják az ember?
A főparancsnok.
A főparancsnok az egész katonaságnál. Nézem, aki a hajókra, ez meg a földinek a fő tábornoka. Volt valami 50 nagyon magas rangú vezetők, és nézek jobbra-balra, azt mondom, ez nem lehet igaz. Ez nem lehet igaz. Hát most ölték meg a szüleimet, meg a testvéreimet, hogy lehet az, hogy a fiam kap tábornoki rangot, és a fiam felesége adott nekem valamit inni, egy pohár vizet, de nem kiabáltam hangosan, de azt mondtam, Istenem, nyisd ki az ég kapuját. Én azt akarom, hogy az anyukám és az apukám és a testvéreim lássák, hogy az unokája tábornoki rangot kapott az izraeli. Nekem. És 4 nap után megkapta a főparancsnokságot. Ez volt április 1-én, mikor kapott tábornoki rangot, és április 4-én megkapta a főparancsnoki rangot.
רחמים שייכים אמרונים, עמתם מלוך וחיינו, על כנפי השכינו, ומלך קדושים דהרים, כזוינו יופיע מסבירי. אז נשמעס
Kedoshim. Tati.
Amen. Shkoyach. Next up, we're going to hear from Rabbi Yitzchak Feldman. Leslie Feldman is going to speak to us a little bit about Bonyhad. This is a very special speech because I have personal Hazkara Tov to the Feldmans and the Neventhal families for helping sponsor the 3rd edition of my book on the Hebrew language. This book over here. So I look very forward to hearing what Mr. Feldman has to say.
Welcome everybody, welcome. I see on my screen that we have maybe 60, close to 70 logons, which could mean it could mean as much as 130 people or something of that nature, which is incredible for the Yort site. I remember the small group that started it, at least to what I recall in America. But much has been said by various people prior to me coming on here. But I was discussed to speak about Bonyhad from the perspective of a young boy. Just to introduce myself, if you don't know who I am, I'm Yitzhak Feldman. My parents are Shmuel and Anna Feldman, Zichron Livrocha. I was born in Bonyhad after the war, and I lived there until the revolution. So everything on my Girsa de Yankasa comes from there. Everything that I went to yeshiva there, I went to cheder, I went to public school there. So I had the early life experience of Bonyhad. And truthfully, the experience was a warm, happy experience, despite the terrible tragedies that the Kehillah went through. I think the parents tried extra to make our life easy and we're precious. Children were precious. There were no children when the war ended. There were none. So let me just go back and go over some of the things that some people have said. But I do want to say, talking about Rav Polak, who spoke about Bonyhad, I just want to say, how is my shachas to Bonyhad, other than the fact that I was born there? Actually, my grandfather on my father's side, who my namesake, Rabbi Yitzhak Yehuda Feldman, Oliver Sholem, Zichron Livrocha, came to Bonyhad. Why did he come to Bonyhad? He was in Mattersdorfer. He was sent to Bonyhad to learn in the yeshiva. And he learned in the yeshiva, and eventually he ended up marrying a very important family in Bonyhad, the Marcus Mishpacha. And that's my grandmother. Her name is Fredel Yehudis. Is the daughter of one of the daughters of Marcus. He was a big toys for yeshiva. He was a supporter of the yeshiva. And actually the yeshiva, part of the yeshiva was in the back of the Marcus house, towards the rear, for what I recall that I was told when I was a kid. So that's just one thing. Second thing my father always said, and someone else said it in a different word, but my father always said that Bonyhad is Ir Shekil Tamid Chachomim. And he didn't say it once, he said it many times. But obviously he was one of them, and from his Marbit Torah his whole life, and his insistence on Dvar Torahs in the appropriate time, Zemiras, Halacha, to keep all the minhagim the way it's supposed to be, is all a source that comes from the Bonyhad wellspring, if you could say that. So let me just bring you back to after the war. Obviously, I wasn't really born yet. My parents got married in 45, late 45. But what happened really was Bonyhad did not suffer a lot from the war in the sense of physical destruction. Very little. Of course, the killer suffered. Over 1,200 people were deported, never came back. The Sheris HaPleita, maybe 200, 250 people came back. Many of them lost spouses, lost everything, and their goal was to put up the Kehillah again, like all the minhagim, all the dinim, and all the takonas that existed before. Nothing else. They were we're an am kashay orev, but that is sometimes very good because we're stubborn. We want to do what we want to do, which we know is right from our Messiah. So when came back, they came and somehow they struggled to put their lives together, find wives or get married. There were no children. I think maybe there was one child who survived somewhere. I don't think they stayed in Bonyhad. And I was one of the first ones born, I believe. And obviously, so they put together, they opened up the Bis Medrash, which was in a small small area of the behind the school, and they also had the cheder room, and all the way at the end was a room for the Rav. Now the Rav was.
Probably has a mask. She put a mask on.
Can you hear me?
I gave him a mask.
He must have a mask.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, the Rov was David Moshkovitz, but he wasn't only Rov in Bonyhad. He was Bonyhad also in Mishkoltz, and he would come and go at different times as required. I don't know the details. I was too little to know, but I know the Beis Medrash was open, and the Cheder room was there, but there were no children. The shul was open, and all everything was done the way it was before the war. I remember in the shul before. Oh yeah, I want to mention this. So when he came back, my uncle Reb Shmulzi Herman, who was the Rosh Kol, I believe he was Rosh Kol before the war. He continued to be Rosh Kol afterwards. My father worked in the background in his quiet way. I saw from there's a museum for Hungarian Jewry. I apologize. I'm not sure where the sound went off. In any case, what I was talking about is the reconstruction of the Kehillah, and and so I said that the Shoichet was the Duvid Breyer, and there was no at that point there was no Cheder, so we don't know who the Rebbe was going to be. In any case, as far as children are concerned, we were part of whatever goes on in the shul. We were running around town, visiting friends, talking to people. Avram Goldring was the Baal Tefillah, beautiful Baal Tefillah. Rosh Hashanah, everybody wore the kittel with the high yarmulke on it. Yom Kippur, in the shield, they spread straw everywhere for the avodah when they had to be carrying mishtachlim. I remember as a small kid, I think I played Marcus. We went together to cut flowers and greens for Shvius in the big shul. Actually, the big shul was only used from Pesach to Shmini Atzeres, I guess. I remember the akufis in the shul, beautiful, and we were everywhere. We went to visit the Blows, the Bahrains, the Kreismans. Evan Kreisman was my contemporary. Levi Marcus. I mean, these people I know since from the day they were born. We know each other. Of course, the Blaus, Agi, Edith, and Leslie. From day one, my parents were very close to everybody, so I was close with them. At some point, my family, we moved to I was very young, to Sobotchak, Utsa 16. This house, I think, belonged to some other Yid from before the war. It was from Zolim Herman, I'm not really sure. And so we were in that house. And on one side, there was a gate, and the gate had a yellow star on it. I'm assuming this was part of the ghetto. It was never removed. And that side went to the kitchen. The other side had an outside porch, and this porch was opening to a garden area where there was trees and this. In the back of the garden, there was a gate that went to the Froelich property. And actually, my mother would send me to Mr. Froelich with a pail because he had 2 milk cows back there. And I went back there to get real Cholav Yisrael, ongoing basis, very often. As far as other things are concerned, the bread and challah, dough was made at home, and the sticker was put on the challah or the bread and taken to the bakery, and he baked it, and then we brought it home with the tag on it and with your name. As far as on Shabbos, oh yeah, I forgot to say the mikveh was down at the end, down the end of the street, and on before Shabbos, everybody took the cholent to cholet. They took to the mikveh. There was a big boiler. The boiler looked to me like a locomotive without wheels. It was sitting on a platform, and the embers were left from Erev Shabbos.
Hello, excuse me. The
Not-
cholent
no,
was,
excuse-
hello, excuse
no
me.
excuse.
The cholent was taken to the mikveh where they had the matzah oil oven. That's
No,
where
no,
they
no,
took
there's no
everybody
matzah over
cholent.
there
I
now.
remember.
I am talking about after the war.
Exactly clear, my friend.
Why are you breaking in? What's your problem?
No problem. But cholent was
Telling
taken.
you what I saw, okay? Then you can get your own what you saw, okay? So the cholent was taken to the mikveh, to the where the boiler was, and it was put in with a wire around the top and your name on it. And after davening on Shabbos, it went to pick it up. They called out somebody was there, maybe Froelich or somebody else.
Did I have your first name first or your last name first?
I have no idea. Mr. Froelich, whatever. Okay. So that was that. At some point, the communists my father was taken away. And they also, at some point, told us to leave the house we were in. First, they took a half, then they took the other half away. And we moved to a multi-dwelling, which was right by the shul, where the shul was, the Beit Boter Midrashim were. And there was a door that came out of, and across the street from us lived Machi and Mary Cohn, and they had the soda factory, and they had their wagon that they used to deliver it, and on there they had the two donkeys who were pulling that wagon, and you could sit on there, and you would pull the string, and they would automatically go home. They knew where to go, where to turn, where their food was. I remember going with the wagon to collect schach for sukkahs in the back parts of Bonyhad. Okay, so this went on for that. Then when we finally, there were enough children, like 3 or 3.5, we went to Cheder, and the girls went to the girls in Beis Yaakov, let's say. The Rebbe was Rabbi Kav Zichron Levrocha and his wife Sorineni. They, from what I understand, they never really had compensation for this thing, but the cheder was an incredible cheder. The girls also, he taught us, what we learned there in the years that we were in Bonyhad was in a very, very high level. To read, Chumash Rashi, Mishnayos, Gemara, learned how to speak in Yiddish. I'm skipping somewhat, but when it came to America or went to yeshiva, gave me a fair, they couldn't believe what's going on. I spoke Yiddish, I knew the Gemara, so I was at the same level as kids in America. So I just want to give that big schus to them for their selfless efforts in making that cheder and also the girls' school. Some of the pictures we saw earlier in the presentations, that was the pictures from the cheder. I'm over there. My sister Julie should be well. Also is in the girls' picture. I think one of the pictures was taken when they took us on a vacation to Balaton, and I think that's where one of the pictures was taken. So in any case, so we had a very nice, interesting. We did not feel the anti-Semitism that probably existed. I remember going to the Neolog Shul on Motzei Shabbos is Daven Ma'ariv there to keep some kind of a contact with the community so that the government doesn't possibly take it or something like that. I'm not aware of it. I don't know. The matzah bakery that was mentioned, I remember myself being there and helping to weigh the flour for the matzah. I was very small. I mean, 7, 8, maybe. I don't think even 9. But in any case, that age, the matzah and Bonyhad, they didn't need. They ate machine matzah, but the shmura matzah that was baked was basically for the first seder, for the first and second seder. That's what it was for. And everybody ate gebracht. When you came to shul the first day, they wanted to know how many kleudlach you ate. Same thing during the week. They put back in the smatters. They were learning every morning. They were learning every night between the Ma'ariv. I used to get up at 5:30. My mother would tell me, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I want to go. I want to have tea. He says, don't drink the tea, they make you go. But it was there and I enjoyed it. Shabbos afternoon, there was fair many times with the Balabatim to see how the boys are doing in the yeshiva, in the cheder. When the time came, they would send us outside to see if there were stars, and we'd stay, and then I would come in, we'd say, yes, we have 3 stars. They would start with the Dodburg Tziri. And talking about this, okay, just one more thing I want to say about with the Lowy house, which was near the Neolog Shul. I used to take there with a sled. There was a hill there. It is also across the street from Leib Marcus's home. And we would ride down there with a sled during the winter time. So one day, all of a sudden in the morning, we wake up and my parents says, here's 2 pairs of pants, put them on. These 2 pairs of coats, put them on. And I guess it was late November, probably in 1956. Yeah, it was Hanukkah, possibly. And we got on a bus. And all of a sudden I see other people from the Kehillah. Apparently the revolution had occurred, even though I think the Russians had already taken control, but the borders apparently were still open, and many of the parents didn't think that there was a future for Yiddishkeit in Bonyhad because of the communists. So I think that was the thing. I want to mention one more thing. I remember the cheder used to be in the morning. We would play soccer. It would be very nice. Then when we had to go to school, the government forced you had to go to public school, so the cheder was switched to the afternoon. And on Shabbos, we had to leave to go to school because that was the rule. But I remember they were davening Musaf, and I would look at the little clock on top, and I would leave and go to school. We didn't have to write, but we had to be there. So in any case, so the next thing is we're on the bus going to Budapest, and then from there, we came to America. It's a long, long story. But I think that the Kehillah, within the 6 months, the Kehillah was finished. Everyone left. I don't even know what happened to all this forum. Maybe the Kehillah from Budapest took it over. And I just want to switch quickly to America, where we came to my uncle Shmuel Zerman, to his house in Borough Park. He had just started the Poal Agudas Yisrael Beis Medrash on 16th Avenue. And immediately that was our place to be. My father, over he right away became the Baal Koira. He was giving some shiurim. Shmuel Herman was giving shiurim, depending different times. And then right away, as I remember then, the first year, when they had the shul, they started the yortzeit, the Bonyhad yortzeit on Shivos B'Tammuz at night, right after the Tzom. Of course, there was always an issue because the Tzom is very late. It's the summer. So we didn't always have many people, and we sort of invited people to come and stay and eat, so to fill up a minyan. And in there, usually my father spoke, Shmuel Herman spoke, my uncle Lotzi spoke, and others who came, Zoli Herman, sometimes Golding was there, and others. But we were very small, and Leib Marcus, myself, a few others, Mr. Fuchs, that you mentioned earlier. As time came on, the Singer brothers came from Eretz Yisrael, and they immediately put themselves in, and with a strong application, they created a whole increase in the people attendance there at some point. Their children, the Eineklach, and everyone else came and became really a movement of the whole Kehillah to be at these at the yortzeit. Then at some point in time when Skavasora came along, I remember being interviewed by her. I remember Shragi, my son, who was helping her get video so she can do a documentary. Then the women started to come. And so then at that point, it became too small. So we moved it to various different locations. Lately, in the last few years, we were in the Ocean Parkway. The Rabbi Flamshul, my dear cousin Debbie and her husband were, and others were sponsors for the thing. Otherwise, we used to collect money for each meal, for each portion. And that's where this Shtalshalut went from a small group to a group that we're international. Of course, we're suffering right now with the smacha that we have. Should be over, and everybody should go back to our normal regular lives, being able to daven with the people, being close, being visiting. And I just want to say one small word. I'm going to end with that. We're connected with Shivosa B'Tammuz, Chai Tammuz, was very close. It's all one part of this tragedy that we had. There are many things went bad on Shivosa B'Tammuz. The Chaimas were broke. Moshe Rabbeinu broke the Lichos, but I saw in the storm that the worst of all the things that happened was that there was no more carbon tumid, no more carbonas, because basically it was the siege. They ran out of carbon. They couldn't make it. So the tumid was every single day, 365 days a year, Shabbos, Yom Tov, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, everything. So why is that considered the worst of all the other bad things that happened? Because the consistency that showed every single day, we never changed. We were always following the Derech Hashem. So I think that Bonyhad and our healer and others who are having their children, Torah, Yira, and yeshivas, whichever type, whatever, doesn't make any difference. That is the biggest victory we can have over the Rotzim of all the Rishon. And maybe we should come to Mashiach Tzidkenu B'meir Me'eni. Amen. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Feldman.
Good afternoon to those of us who are logging into Eretz Yisrael and of the East Coast. And good morning to all of us who are logging in from East Coast and beyond. I was asked to speak about a certain topic of Bonyhad, which is probably the most important part of Bonyhad, to discuss the history of the yeshiva of Bonyhad. So much so that if someone would talk about the history of Bonyhad and leave out any mention of the yeshiva, of what it meant to the Kehillah to have a yeshiva amongst themselves, the pride they took of housing a yeshiva amongst the little city of Bonyhad, anybody who leaves out this issue is basically not talking about the history of Bonyhad. Just to introduce myself, my name is Shalom Tzvi Brown. My grandfather is Leo Brown. My grandmother, Ibi Brown, also Eliezer and Chana Brown. My grandfather's mother is a Marcus, and her father is a person by the name of Shalom Tzvi Marcus, which I'm ultimately named after. My grandfather had a uncle by the name of Yosef Yehuda Marcus, which will be where I will end my drasha, my speech. I consider it a great honor and a privilege to be able to share with you a bit about the history of Bonyhad, to perhaps get a small glimpse of the great past of Bonyhad. I'd like to begin by asking the following question. Something which has been bothering me when I looked into a little about the history of Bonyhad. I've noticed that a lot of cities, not just Bonyhad per se, when they sign off, when they refer to letters to one to another, they write Kuf Kuf the Bonyhad, let's say. Kuf Kuf the Amsterdam. Kuf Kuf the whatever city it is. What does Kuf Kuf stand for? We all know it means Kahal Kedushas or Kehilas Kodesh Bonyhad. Why is it that the city was referred to Kehilas Kodesh or Kahal Kedushas Bonyhad? What was it that they merited to have this title of Kuf Kuf, Kedusha of Kehilas Kodesh of Bonyhad. We find a similar city of Kodesh, but it's referred to as Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, not Kehilas Yerushalayim. It's Ir HaKodesh. So why is it that Bonyhad and the cities of Europe were considered Kehilas Kodesh, and as opposed to Yerushalayim was Ir HaKodesh, not the Kehila? I'm not going to answer for all the other cities. I'm just going to perhaps shed some light of my understanding of why was Bonyhad per se Zoicha and merited to have this title of Kedusha, Kahal Kehilas HaKodesh. We heard before from Rabbi Pollack in Zurich that the first Rav in 1746 was the name of Yitzchak Zekel Spitz.
Pollack is from Antwerp, not Zurich.
I'm sorry, Antwerp. Thank you.
His brother Zachariah lives in Switzerland, but he lives in the.
Thank you. And he mentioned that Yitzchak Zekel Spitz from Nikolsburg was the first Rav of Bonyhad. What happened all of a sudden that they decided to import a Rav in Bonyhad, to Bonyhad? According to census, the city of Bonyhad perhaps had about 4,000 or so people living there at that time. Of those, Jews were roughly about 900, which gives you about 20-25% of the population of Bonyhad was Jewish, was from maybe. Now, when Yidden get together and feel comfortable, Yiddishkeit-wise, growing in Yiddishkeit, feeling a hub, feeling a bubble that's growing, it's naturally by Yidden that they would look for a leader to spiritually guide them. It was that drive, it was that quest of feeling a comfortable, a growing of Yiddishkeit, that they needed a Rav. They needed someone to guide them spiritually. So they looked. They went to import a Rav. And it wasn't just any Rav. They looked for the best. They sent out letters to the big cities where the Talmidei Chachamim were there. And they asked, please send us a big gadol, send us a Rav, send us someone who could lead us, who could guide us. And the Rav's requirement wasn't a small job. He had to start a shul. He had to give shiurim. He had to be in charge of the Chevra Kedisha. He had to implement the yeshiva. It was on his job to do all these things. And in later years, it was Irgun Chesed. It started from within. When the Kehila feels the need, the drive that the Kehila has is what makes a Kehila go. We find throughout the history of Bonyhad that when they aspire to bring in a Rav, it's a sign that the city is alive. The city is bubbling. The city has a koich of Yiddishkeit. 1781, Harav Yisrael Biznetz, and afterwards Harav Yehuda Leif Freistadt. And it was roughly 50 years later that Bonyhad suffered its first tragedy. In 1794, there was a huge, big fire that broke out, destroyed many buildings. It wasn't unusual for fires to break out in Europe. And in that year, many buildings burnt down, and among them was the shul, the yeshiva. It's written in the Tshuva, in the Noida B'Yehuda, that they try to look up some document to a certain halachic shaila that was discussed over there. And they said, we can't look up any information. Our shul burnt down. And they write that Sifrei Kodesh was burned. The Sefer Torahs were burned. More than one. Sifrei Torahs, they write. And we don't have any books of Yadai. We don't have any more Svarim. It got burned to the ground. Now hear what they had 50 years later. Sifrei Torahs. In 50 years, you could come up with more than one Sefer Torah. They had Ksav Yadai. They had Svarim and Oitzer. In 50 years, look what Bonyhad did. Look what Bonyhad accomplished. And it was burned to the ground. The city was devastated. As a matter of fact, they had a kina that they said on the yard side of the Sreifa, which was the Shabbos after Pesach. And in this kina with the Rashi Tevis of the Rav Avram Yehuda Leib, Aleph Beis Reish, and so on, that they said every year on the yard side. But then the people rebounded. They once again rallied. We need another yeshiva. We need another shul. And it wasn't until 1818 that they had a Rav by the name of Rabbi Herschel Charif, Rabbi Tzvi Heller, that it was under his leadership that he inspired. He had a tremendous koyach. He was an attraction. He was famous for his shurim, his charisma, and it was under his leadership that Bonyhad grew. In yeshiva, that was a large number. They say it was about over 500 bachurim. The number's probably closer to 600. Guys, bachurim came from all over, not just local. Lahavdil, Disney World. How many people just come from Florida? All over the world people come. The same thing was by Bonyhad. Bachurim traveled. It wasn't easy to travel in those years. It wasn't just get on a plane. And they traveled because they wanted to be under that great yeshiva from 1818 and on for the next 25 years. They had a tremendous life. The Kehillah loved it. They offered Essentag, which means that besides the yeshiva, the Kehillah was involved. At that point, it was Irbunei Chesed. Shiurim was given, and of course, it was in Yiddish, not in Hungarian. But it wasn't until 1842 that, again, Bonyhad had a little downhill. When the years of the Enlightenment, the Mischatshim started coming, changing old ideas. The ideas was once considered minig hamakim. I'll give you an example of what a minig hamakim meant. When a young couple would get married, they had the chuppah outside the shul, in the courtyard. And when the Mischatshim came and said, no, let's change it, let's put it back in the shul. Again, against minig hamakim, they didn't want that. The bima, as we all know, was in the middle of the shul. They moved it to the front of the shul. Small changes, but a change that the Anshe Kehillah of Bonyhad didn't want this change. We have minhagim. Our Rabbanim that came established us minhagim. We don't want to change a small thing that makes no real halachic nafkamina. And one of the things which I think bothers me a lot is the drushes. The Rav, besides his Shabbos drushes, he gave drusha during the week, and anytime the Kehillah wanted a drusha about a certain halacha coming up, or a certain hashkafa, they had a drasha. And these mischatshim, and the minig was that during the drasha, that people sat at the edge of their seats, waiting to hear every single word what the Rav would say, and willing to jump on him. There was a tremendous amount of pilpul. They would jump on him and say, hey Rav, what happened? You asked, he said like this, and he would question him. And the Rav had to answer. And he questioned back until the Rav gave a satisfying answer. There was a pilpul and shir. It wasn't like the Rav would give a drush and the oilam would shluf. They were alive, they were active, they wanted to hear every single word that the Rav had to say. And these mischatrim said, no, let the Rav talk, we'll shluf, it's fine. And the Kehillah didn't want that. But after time again, it took a toll on the Rav, and he said, I have to leave. It was 1854, under much pressure, that the Rav left. The Kehillah was left without a Rav. Again, Yiddishkeit was going down. Bonyhad was going from darkness to black. And it wasn't easy. And it was until 1872, just under 20 years later, that the Kehillah said, you know what, enough with import. Let's look for a local. Let's look for a local Rav who could guide us here, a Bonyhad. And they found Rav Moshe Halevi Polak, a Talmudic Ksav Sofer, a chaver from the Maram Shik. His job wasn't easy. He had to build up what was being knocked for the past 18 or so years. He reestablished the yeshiva. He made the shurim back in Yiddish, not Hungarian. With the backing of the Kehillah, with the support of the Kehillah. Attracted new bachurim, and once again, the yeshiva life started up again. Essentag was a very important figure. As a matter of fact, my grandfather tells me that you would not want to go to Mrs. So-and-so for supper because she would always serve you kasha, and you don't like kasha. And if you don't like kasha, you line your pockets with newspaper, so when she's not looking, you stick it in and, it was delicious. Afterwards, at that period of time, Bonyhad itself produced dayanim.
What did you like kasha?
Okay, up to you.
Was it a kasha?
Bonyhad itself, produced Dayanim, Magidi Shiurim, Mechabri Svarim, Abdei Bezdin. At that point, Bonyhaders, the original Bonyhaders grew with their own self-made people. We have those Svarim. Again, Bonyhad saw great days. The next Rav, 1888, 1889, reviewed the Greenwald, as we heard before, the Rav from Satmar. 1891, Rav Avram Levi Polak was a Moitz and a Magid. And then it was, which will be at that point, 1924, Rav Aaron Pressburger, that again had 100 students. When the Rav got sick, the last and final Rav, Rav Aaron Pressburger, got sick, and he couldn't lead anymore Bonyhad at the late 1924 and on. Bonyhad once again was left out of Rav. But it was one more last breath before Nazi Germany and Mach Shimon would walk into that town. That my grandfather's uncle, a person by the name of Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Marcus, who's known as Levi Marcus Yeshiva, single-handedly supported, both emotionally and financially, the yeshiva for 50 boys. And they asked him, why are you doing this? Why? Why do you see, look what's going on. We hear Nazi Germany rearing its ugly head. What are you doing? Why are you establishing a yeshiva? And he made his own building, a place to have a yeshiva that he's going to have the guys know. He learned, and you know what he said? Because Bonyhad needs a yeshiva. If there's no yeshiva in Bonyhad, I will make one. I'm quoting him. So to answer my question, why was Bonyhad called Kiyos HaKodesh? We know back in Parshas Vayetze, Yaakov Avinu traveled, going out of his father Yitzchak's house, and he went to Vayom Mamokai Mahu, which you know is the Beis HaMikdash, and he laid down, the sun went down. He laid down there, and he said, he took me Avnei HaMakoim, to put around his head, and Rashi brings a medrash that says, because he wanted to protect his Chayis Rois. So he put stones around his head. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not a good camper. But one thing I do know, if I would go to the forest and just put stones around my head, I am not doing anything about those Chayis Rois. They'll just eat the rest of my body. What was Yaakov Avinu doing, putting stones around his head to protect him from the Chayis Rois? The Mefarshim are bothered. And they say it wasn't about the Chayis Rois that we know as lions and not tigers. It was the Rois, is the Chayis Rois Aruchni. He says, protect my head. It's the Mokem Mekadosh. I'm going to my father's house learning Kol Kuli Torah. I'm going now to the Gullus. He asked Baruch Hu, protect my head. I'm going out to the Gullus, to Lavan, to the Goyim. It was that time that Yaakov Avinu was Zoichet to the title Kedoshenu Kedosh Yaakov, which you say in benching. There lies my answer. When someone designates his life, when someone designates his mind for Kedusha, for Torah, for Yiddishkeit, in his title, then he gets the title of a Kadosh. Of course, if someone dies al Kiddush Hashem, he gets a title of Kadosh. But this is when they're alive, when they were active as a Kehila. They were Zoiches with the title of Kedusha. Because we see that the Kehila wanted Kedusha. They wanted to be part of a Yiddish life, a Minhagim, a Halacha, Torah. And they accomplished that. Of course they get the title of Kedusha. So, in conclusion, I hope I was able to tap in a bit about the great history of Yeshiva Bonyhad, although it's probably just the tip of the iceberg. I'm only coming from historical facts. The people that were there know much more than me. Eyewitnesses that are still around today, Admei Vesrim. But one thing I do know, when Mashiach comes in Meher B'Yameinu, I'm going to ask our ancestors, how did you do this? How did you accomplish such great things? They're going to look at us and say, you guys are crazy. It's not a question. We had to have done it. Because that's what Yiddishkeit is based on, Kedusha. Although Bonyhad, as a town, was destroyed, the Torah, the Svarim, the Yotzi Chalatzav still remains. We're all here today. All 63 or so, whatever Zoom people are in here on the Zoom today. We're learning their Torah. We're continuing them in Hagim. and in their footsteps we follow, their midos, their hugis. May this be a schus for them, and may they be a male tziosh for all of us. And with that, we'll be zoicha to greet Mashiach b'mheir b'meinu amen. Thank you for your time.
Wow. Thank you very much, Shalom Tzvi Brown. That was a very inspiring sermon, and you certainly offered a very entertaining and interesting dramatization of the history of the Kehillah in Bonyhad, especially the Orthodox community. We also have to keep in mind that many survivors and many people who are associated with the Kehillah of Bonyhad come from the Neolog and the status quo communities, and it's something also to keep in mind as well. It's not just that has a copyright on all of this stuff. It's also interesting to note that some of the facts that Shalom Tzvi said over are very interesting ideas. I don't know any evidence about the historical documents about the Kehillah of Bonyhad sending letters to find a new Rav when they got Zekel Spitz. So maybe you can share some of your sources with us. At this point, we're going to have to wrap up. We were supposed to have Shragi Feldman speaking, but it looks like we're going to have to save that for a different year because we're running out of time. So I'd like to thank everybody who participated, all the people who gave their presentations and their speeches, all the people who stayed on listening, all the people who were listening before and they already left. And Be'ezus Hashem, we pray that we're going to see all of you again here next year in Eretz Yisrael for the second International Bonyhad Hazkara, hosted by Melech HaMashiach himself, speedily and in our days. Amen.
Reuven?
Yes, sir.
Yes, let Shragi make some statements because he wanted to make some closing remarks, which are important, procedurally.
Shragi seems to change his mind.
If Shragi is online.
No, that's fine. Just as a reminder, first of all, thank you all for joining and participating. I apologize for any of the technical difficulties that we experienced along the way. I will perhaps send some remarks for others who would like to join or would like to see them. I'm going to be sending out an email with the, if you haven't already received it, with the link to the sign up for the membership. We have tried several times in the past, and unfortunately, we've had many issues with people not having their names, not giving the right names. So it will be nice if we can get a list of all people. Obviously, when you're putting in your name, when it says first name, it's not the last name, it's the first name. And so really appreciate it all. Thank you all very much. And I hope to see you B'karov in Yerushalayim, Kehillas Kadosha Yerushalayim, B'mheir b'meinu.
Let's give Shragi and Larry a round of applause.
We're going to leave this open so that people, if they want to converse, they are allowed to converse. If you want to privately message each other, you're welcome to. Please remember to add your information to the Bonyhad list. Thank you so much, and have a good summer. Bye.
We should also give Reuven a round of applause.
Hey.
Kol hakavod to you.
And also to Larry Pfeffer, a round of applause. And Eva Illich. Eva.
Beautiful. You and I will speak on the phone, okay?
Okay, no problem. I just want to say hello to Chava Rivka. I haven't seen you for like 15 years, 20 years, and you still look beautiful, and you're still very, vibrant and everything, which is very, very good. And keep up your good work. I'm not from Bonyhad, but I'm an honorary member of Bonyhad.
Glad that you joined us, Gabi.
Okay, thank you very much, Larry. And everybody should be well and should be keep safe. That's the most important thing right now.
Shragi,
everything everything will be good.
Let's hope so. Shragi, did you
anybody hears me?
Yeah.
Avramosha Brown, Pinchas Elei Nisan. Anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Is Taki Laser Brown or Ibby or Rivka Brown or Mendy Brown around? I could say personal hello to them.
Yeah, Mendy Brown. Moishele.
I don't see Mendy.
You see me?
Mendy, I don't see you, Mendy.
Oh, one second, my mother's going to sit down first. She's by the chair
Let me
there.
see your mother.
Zelig, tell Bobby to sit down.
Where's Ibby?
Right here. Tell Bobby to sit down in the Zadie's chair.
Ibby. Where's Ibby? Maybe she recognizes
Yeah, of course you're going to recognize you.
Ibby?